To talk more about biodiversity, I'm joined now by Dr. Saharah Moon Chapotin, who is the Executive Director of the United States Botanic Garden. Great to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Welcome.
Let's start with looking at all these plants around here. A lot of biodiversity, but what does that mean, biodiversity?
Oh goodness, biodiversity is just the richness of life on this planet, and you can start at the bacteria, fungi, plants, animals, but it's the genes, it's the organisms, it's the communities, and the ecosystems of life on this planet.
It's basically everything, right?
Everything, that's right.
Now, why is it important to us?
So biodiversity fundamentally sustains life on this planet. You think of the plants and how they sustain animals and they sustain humans. Plants themselves rely on animals for dispersal and pollination. Even bacteria are everywhere and are supporting so many processes on life.
So everything's dependent on each other. It's the cycle of life, isn't it?
Exactly.
So let's talk about endangered species. There are so many species which are now under threat. In fact, there's so many that have disappeared altogether. How did they disappear in the first place?
Well, the primary cause is what humans are doing to the planet. It's usually habitat loss. So land is lost to agriculture, to urbanization, to other human uses. So the habitat just no longer supports the plants or the animals in it.
Now, we have this cactus here, golden barrel cactus. Very impressive looking cactus. It's an endangered species.
Yes, highly endangered. And this is a prime example of a species that is lost to habitat loss.
Now, when a species disappears from the planet, what kind of impact does that have?
Well, it depends on the species, but what's I think so alarming is today species are being lost that we don't even know about. They are not known to science. Sometimes they may not be known to anybody. And so plants, I'm thinking about plants in particular, provide us with so many uses: food, medicine, clothing, shelter, pollination services. Animals provide pollination to plants. And so when they're lost and we didn't even know they existed, I can't even tell you what we're losing.
You know, every day we sit down to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but we forget where all that came from.
That's
now,
right.
right here, you've got a microcosm of a farm, right?
We do, an urban farm. We are converting so much land to agriculture. And so urban agriculture is a different way of growing food that, especially when it's indoors like this, that isn't converting land and causing habitat loss, which leads to biodiversity loss.
So we're now in a tropical forest. What are we walking through?
So as you see around you, you have plants, you have trees, you have vines. Tropical forests are one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world.
And we have wet and dry here.
Yes.
Right. Okay, now if you look at that sort of latitudinal band around the Earth, we'd find the highest number of species in that band.
Very, very rich species diversity throughout the tropics in South America, into Africa, Southeast Asia, and all the way around in the Pacific.
And you've traveled to these areas, right?
Some of them, yes.
Yeah. Which was the most diverse or interesting area that you went to?
Well, you know, I spent a lot of time working in Madagascar, and it's an island. And so islands are particularly diverse because many of the species found on islands are found nowhere else in the world.
We talked earlier on about there being so many species that are disappearing right now. What can be done to stop this slide, to stop plants and other organisms disappearing?
Well, there's some really critical things we can do to stop plants from disappearing. The first is protecting the environment, the habitats that they live in. We need to ensure those are protected, connected with others, and that the people around them are supportive of that protection, that they have a way to earn a living without impacting that natural environment. The second thing we can do, especially for very rare and endangered species, is to ensure that they are also protected in living collections. Like here at the U.S. Botanic Garden, we have plants that are highly endangered. And should anything ever happen to those plants in the wild, we and other botanic gardens have a repository of those plants and can share them and ensure that that plant continues to live.
Right, so there is a plan in place right now.
There are plans in place. We need more. Some of the work we are doing is to fund conservation assessment. So we're actually having teams go out and trying to determine the status of a plant that we know perhaps is endangered, but we don't know how bad it is. And so once we know the status, the conservation status of plants, then we can develop conservation plans.
Dr. Chapotin, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.